Are you tired of all the voices who say, focus on the bottom line numbers?
Say whatever you have to, just close the sale.
Just get the credit card. It doesn't matter what you deliver.
You will never build a successful business until you grow a pair and stop caring so much.
Here, we respectfully disagree. We give you permission to embrace who you are, how much you care, and encourage you to design a business that works for you and your clients. Welcome to The Art of Giving a Damn, the podcast that proves with every single episode that you can create a profitable business doing what you're passionate about and making a positive difference in the world. Now here's your host, Michelle Schaefer.
Welcome to another episode of The Art of Giving a Damn. And today my guest wrote in the questionnaire one of the, I think probably the most profound thing anybody who's been on the show has written in that form. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. Jessica, thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, now I'm wondering what I wrote because I don't remember what this profound thing that I shared. Thank you so much for having me, Michelle.
Well, first, let me just introduce you so that our listeners know who it is that they are listening in on a conversation with today. So Jessica Schiller Silverman is a holistic wellness and business startup coach. So she helps aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking for clarity, simplicity, and really figuring out what their life's purpose is. Through her coaching, she guides clients with mind-body empowerment tools to spark transformation, I like that, of physical and spiritual awakening to live and feel their most alive self. I love that. And so that's what you really do is coaching around how do you live your life's purpose, especially through a business. And what you wrote in the form about what we could talk about, because I do a questionnaire that everybody listening, you guys may know, guests let me know what would they like to talk about on the show. And one of the things that you shared was, and I'm just going to read it straight. So this is a Jessica quote, "The day you were born is the day the universe decided it needed you." That just hit me when you shared that. I read that. I was like, okay, I got to have a conversation with you. So let's start from there and start with what inspired you to take that idea and turn it into a business.
And I get goosebumps every time I hear that, right? It's like the thing you can't hear enough, because I think especially people thinking about starting a business or even current entrepreneurs looking to grow their business, or that whole who am I conversation, It just helps really bring it all together to know that we all have, every single human being, whether or not you ever become an entrepreneur, we all have a divine purpose in this life. That's why we incarnated in this form, right? And I, of course, don't want to get too esoteric and too lofty here, but what really inspired me to do this work and to help other people, and of course to start my own business, was that I never knew. I didn't know. I felt, as many people do today, and I'm sure yourself as well, Michelle, that I felt outside of my own body. I felt that I was living behind a mask for many years of my life. And it's almost like, not necessarily as a child, right? Because as a child, you're so carefree, right? You're very much a creative. You have no worries. You're just able to live and breathe your passions because you have the support, right, of your family and your upbringing, and you have that safety net. And then you become an adult, and either your parents or whoever raised you, right, trains you, as I was, to live a very conventional life. And, you go to school and you get the grades and you work for this corporation, and maybe after so many years, you can have family and kids and the white picket fence, and then you wait till you're 65 to retire, and then you can live your life. And there was just something about that didn't sit well with me, right? Ever since I was a little girl, I always had a questioning mind. I was always that child that not only asked why, but wanted to defy what was real or what I was told was real. Because we all know, your reality is really how you see your life. It's really all perspective. And so really, and there's so many layers really to my story, which is why I started in holistic wellness and kind of morphed into a business coach, really because I had a lot of women coming to me on social media. I started sharing my story in wellness because living the corporate life, I was very much out of alignment, 80, 90 pounds overweight, severe depression and anxiety, again, just really feeling outside of my own skin, feeling like there was something wrong with me because I would change jobs, every year, 2 years, 3 if I was lucky. And just wondering, and my folks were like, what's wrong with you? You're unstable, right? You meet with recruiters and they're like, what's wrong with you? You're just not stable.
Right.
I'm very much stable, but I know what I love. And I just felt that itch, or that niggle, I think is the term, that kind of, as Rebecca Campbell uses, I follow her very devoutly, that there's just something more to life. There's something more to life. And that's really the whole concept behind, right? The day you were born is the day that the universe decided it needed you, right? And as I always say, it's time to find out why. And of course, I have a free gift for your listeners, at some point on the episode, to share a tool that really helped me kind of open that door and really understand, what is my divine purpose here, right? What is my expertise? What is my legacy? What do I want to be known for, right? In this life that, not to be morbid, but, at the end of my life, I will have no regrets because I left this mark for humanity.
I think niggle's a great word for it. I think all of us have that little feeling that there's got to be something more. And it's what drives so many people into starting their own business, into entrepreneurship, is there's got to be something more. I think we all have that just knowing deep down inside, we're here for a reason. There's got to be something. And it can be really tough to take that leap and go, I'm going to figure out what it is. So let's kind of start there. What was it for you that gave you the courage or pushed you off that cliff to take that leap into your own business after being in the corporate world?
Yeah, so I'll kind of rewind 4 years ago, and I actually get goosebumps because we're about to do the same move back across the country. So I currently live in the Bay Area in San Francisco. My husband and I, we were dating at the time, moved out here 4 years ago based on, again, another itch to move to this area. I was an auditor, so I used to travel here 2 to 3 weeks out of the year, to various clients. Just love the energy of the Bay Area. We were currently living in Chicago at the time. I'm originally from Florida, so kind of follow me here. We're all
everywhere.
over the States.
All right.
So yeah, and we're actually moving back to Florida in the next month. So that's kind of why I mentioned that I have goosebumps, because I'm kind of in that spirit again of starting a new chapter in my life, moving back, towards my family. But we met in Chicago, and it's funny, thinking about visualization, because all over my apartment, my boyfriend at the time, husband, noticed that I had all these pictures of, the California flag, the Bay Bridge, like cable cars. And he's like, what is your obsession with California and San Francisco specifically? And I said, well, I know I'm going to live there one day. I just know. And this is when I first met him. So like fast forward to, 4 years ago, and he would see this depression and anxiety that I mentioned before. Like, he's like, you're a totally different person Monday through Friday than you are in the evenings and on the weekends. And you're so depressed. And like, I couldn't get out of bed most mornings. Like, Sunday night, it was like, my heart would be racing and I would get sweaty, and my mind would just be racing, right? That monkey mind, just thinking about going back to my corporate job. And I was in corporate finance at the time, in accounting. And I just said, one day I'm like, let's just move. I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I love the whole bohemian, free-spirited movement of the Bay Area. Accounting and finance, you can find that job pretty much anywhere, which is why, I was in that line of work. Right. So I felt pretty comfortable with that move. Of course, my husband, maybe not so much, but we actually just went all in, and it was around Thanksgiving, Christmas. So seeing lots of family, they're like, so do you guys have a plan? And we're like, no, we'll figure it out. Like, I didn't have a job. We didn't have a job. They're like, so you're moving to one of the most expensive cities in the United States, if not the world, without a plan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can imagine the family conversations are probably a little awkward.
Yes. So we, I'll kind of fast forward. I know there's so many layers to the story, but we packed up a U-Haul, whatever could fit in our belongings, drove cross country from Chicago to the Bay Area, which was one of the most exciting and liberating trips of my entire life. We probably took a whole week just kind of touring the United States and not even knowing, what tomorrow brings, but just feeling so free and liberated, just knowing that. And
Wow.
a few months later, found a job in venture capital. So again, funding other startups and their dreams, doing accounting.
Very
So
cool.
next step, right? Kind of getting out of, big corporations, working to fund startups, but still at the end of the day, writing checks for other people's dreams. And it's funny you mentioned what kind of gave me that urge, what triggered that voice within me to step away. And just, again, I kind of did it cold turkey because that's just the spirit of who I am. I'm like, if I'm going to go all in, and I'm just going to take, thinking finance, like highest reward comes from the highest risk. So I just kind of went all in, and really the catalyst for it, of course, there's many things building up to it, but it was podcasting. Like we talked about in the beginning, like,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right? So I had the itch, but what really convinced me to know that I can do this is listening to other people's stories of the same thing, of stepping away, of releasing whatever toxicity it was they had in their life, whether it was a relationship or a job or, right, physical ailments, some type of past trauma. And I'm like, wow, like, I can do this. Like, and I remember, I don't even know who it was, but it was a podcast I listened to where somebody said, she said, you have two choices. You can continue to live the life that you know, the known, the safe, right, the comfortable life, or you can step away to the complete unknown. You don't know when your income is going to come month to month, if it's going to be consistent, is this offer going to work out? Is this business going to work out? But at the end of the day, worst case scenario, right? What is every entrepreneur's biggest fear, especially when they start out? Okay, I'm going to fail and then I'll be homeless, right? And then I won't have any money to live, right?
Worst case. Which sums it up. Worst case.
Right. Worst case, guess what? I still have a degree in finance. I can still go back to what I know, or whatever career it is you do have. You really have nothing to lose, right? It's pretty much a win-win situation because I can always go back to that. But at least, like I always say, and this is a pretty well-known quote, but you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you don't take that risk, you've already failed because you haven't even given yourself the opportunity, right? But by opening that door, and I didn't take a complete crazy risk. I had 3 months of income to live off of safely. It was like my Christmas bonus. I went in, again, had severe anxiety, had 2 weeks off, came back at the beginning of the year. And my husband's like, just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off. You know what I mean?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
And, we'll figure it out. And he really, I call my husband my angel because, like, he's so supportive, of this. And, and financially, like, he can't support us both living out here. So, like, I had to make it work. And I just remember, we were actually talking about it last night because I was on another podcast interview yesterday. I really felt like, and I know this sounds very morbid, but just being real, I felt like I had a gun to my head. Like for the first 6 months maybe of my business, where it was just like, you've got to make this work. You've got to make this work. Mainly because I really didn't want to have to go back to that other scenario. Right. But at the end of the day, it's not just that, it's the whole divine purpose, right? Somebody asked me yesterday on the podcast, what really kept you going despite, because I always say that's the key to being a successful in anything in life, forget being an entrepreneur, is whether or not you feel like it, whether or not, you succeed, you just pick back up and you keep going despite. So what kept me going despite all the fears, despite looking at my bank account at times and seeing single digits, was knowing that I'm connected to this divine purpose. I have a mission in this life. I didn't know what it was at the time, but that evolved, right? And I've been doing this now for 4 years. That evolved over time. And now I feel so blessed to have had that sort of, rock bottom experience, so I could experience that, because out of true pain, right, comes passion. And through that passion, I'm able to inspire and show other women and give them permission really to do the same.
Yeah. Wow. There were so many things in there. I've got like a list of questions to go to. I think that's so true what you said about being able to take your story and inspire other people when you share it. Because like you said, one of the things that inspired you was listening to those podcasts, was hearing those stories. And I think when we hear those, we go, okay, if they can do it, then there's got to be a way I can do it too. There's got to be. And it does really help. That's one reason I think it's so important for us to share those stories. And I know you're not alone in having those experiences where you feel like, okay, this is it. There's a gun to my head. I have to make it work. So how did you deal with that? I know we have people listening who are in that space where they feel like, do I just give up and go back to a job that I hate, that other people around me, like people look at you and wait, you're depressed, you're not happy. Do they go back to that? Or do they push forward through that moment and make it work? What did you do that got you through that space?
Well, I pushed forward, but I'm going to be real. It wasn't always easy. Again, it was a constant reminder of, okay, number one, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Even if I didn't necessarily know why, right? Like I started in holistic wellness because that was the season that I was in. I was amidst repairing my life. And so to me, like health is number one. You know, yes, I'm a business coach now. I love what I do. But if you're not okay in your body, you know what I mean? If you're physically unable to perform this work, and physical affects mental, I always say health is the most important thing that you will ever have. So to me, that was so important to share my story. And that's really where I started. I actually transitioned. So if there is somebody listening out there that's in a corporate path, no, you don't have to go right all in and just quit your job tomorrow. Start transitioning. You know, I got on social media and started sharing my story as I was losing weight, as I was repairing.
Smart approach to it.
All of that, right. All of that toxicity, start blogging, you know, start getting on interviews, you know, guest speaking, whatever it is to sort of get your message out, whatever medium you feel comfortable, write a book, right? So for me, that was my wellness journey. And then, like I said, it evolved into women following me on social media, like, wow, you're so powerful. Like you have this way of writing that I feel I've never met you, but I can feel you in the room. And that's when I knew, and at the end of the day, whenever I had those tough moments, I knew that that was my creative genius. Like I am a writer. I have a story within me, and a story within me that I don't continue to share with the world is the equivalent of a book collecting dust on a shelf, right? It helps nobody. It doesn't inspire myself, right? And so a lot of this, I always say, your entrepreneurial path is an extension of you and your life. So for me, it was also a soul healing journey, right? To be on this. And so what financial position can you be in that will make up for that, right? That's just priceless. That's not something, you know, and in the beginning, yeah, I took a pay cut. I made 6 figures, you know, I mean, you have to live in the Bay Area.
Oh yeah.
And you went from there to nothing. Really, you know, like I said, you know, the gun against the head, but really it was just about knowing that my mission was so needed in the world. And again, this connects to the freebie that I have for your listeners. It's based on a Japanese concept called your ikigai, which is your reason for being. And it's just a series of 4 simple but so profound questions, right? Like, what does the world need? What do you love, right? And then, you know, what can you make money doing? And connecting, there's 4 profound questions, and you connect all those dots to see how do they all align. You know, and it sounds simple, but once you get, and that's why I love just the power of writing and the power, because it gets all that anxiety and all the thoughts from your head out on paper, right? Or typing, whatever medium works for you. I'm a pen and paper kind of girl because I think it has a special energy.
Yeah.
But just receiving those downloads, right? Those divine downloads, those light bulb moments, you know, those moments where you just feel liberated from the stories that you inherited, right? Because I always say the life that you may have lived and the stories, the way you think, it may not be you, right? It might be something that somebody else implanted in you. So really just finding yourself through that. And I just think that journey is priceless. You know, is entrepreneurship made for everybody? Absolutely not. Like if you don't, it's not for the faint of heart. And if you're not, you know, willing to kind of ride those waves, then I say, yeah, if you feel, you know, insecure in that, and maybe stay in a corporate position and do this as a side hustle, right? But at the end of the day, no money in the world can make up for this experience. And, you know, and I've grown my business. I've seen, you know, these last couple years, 200-300% growth in my business. And I just feel really blessed for that, but it didn't just come. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yes, I'm very spiritual. I'm very much an advocate of being connected to the divine and being, right? But you still have to make moves, right? And I think that's what also has kept me going in the tough times, is knowing that as long as I continue to make moves, even if they're not maybe the best move at the time, or even if I make an oopsie and I trip a little bit, guess what? Like, that's awesome. That shows me what I need to not do next time. Right? It's like, it's that big, again, light bulb moment. It's like almost like you want to fail faster because you know, hey, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Now you're going to try something else, right? And see if that sticks. I always say it's kind of a big, giant experiment somewhat. It's like we don't always know exactly what we're doing, but in the end, it all worked out. And it always reminds me, I don't know exactly word for word, but the Steve Jobs quote about connecting the dots, going back in time, right? That's how I visualize all of this, right? So if I could look back to my, 4 years ago when I started this and had no idea, right? And I connect back, like, yeah, even all the moments where maybe I didn't make the right decision or maybe I took a call and it wasn't the right fit, right? It was such a learning opportunity. And I'm so grateful for all those experiences because it made me who I am today.
I love that perspective of looking at it all like a big giant experiment. I think that's a great way to phrase it, because if you can do that and kind of disconnect from it a little bit and just go, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens. It lets you get through some of the indecision and the fear and the things that we let stop us. So let's talk about that piece of it for a minute. You started out in wellness, sharing what your journey had been as far as weight loss and getting healthy again. And I think that's a place that I know a lot of people find themselves when they're also trying to figure out what's my purpose. Because I think those things are really related. When we're doing something that we know it's not what we're really meant to do, we do spiral into that sometimes and end up overweight or with health challenges or things that we got to get that fixed at the same time that we're going, okay, and to stay out of that, to figure out what I'm really here to do. So as you shared that story and got started with wellness coaching, what was the transition like for you in that experiment of moving into the business side of things more?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's funny that you asked me that because I have a whole course dedicated to that. It's called Live Your Vibrant Life. And it's really, again, looking back, that was my first course birthed out of the exact steps that I took. I was like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
what did I do?
Yeah.
How did this journey go? How did it all go? What worked? What didn't work, again, in this big giant experiment? And I pieced that all together to help me, because I thought back, okay, what would I have wanted to know? Like, what would have saved me all that time and energy, right, wasted in this big experiment? I can summarize this into sort of 8 weeks of how I revived my life, how I became, right, alive again. And I summarize that, of course, all the components, right? Healthy eating, getting enough sleep. It's all very much connected, because when you're physically out of alignment, right? That's kind of the whole body experiment. That's, health issues. That's being overweight. That's feeling low energy, right? Again, it's all connected, but it's also being out of your own mind, right? Because when you're out of your body, right, you're out of your mind. And so it's very much like, right, a whole, and I know it sounds very cliche, but a very mind, body, spirit, the whole spiritual, physical, and emotional, right, connection of you to your body, right, and then you to this greater, right, purpose, right? So that kind of connects both worlds into, okay, first, become your own, like, know who you are, right, as a person, like your habits, right? All health is all choices. So not just understanding. And I love how the wellness world has evolved into this, outside of the whole crash dieting and juices and all of that, into more what I call like food psychology. Like, it's not just what you eat. We all know what's healthy, right? We all know to eat, right, clean foods.
We know the right things to do. We just don't always have the habits to support it.
We just don't do it, right? We know we should move more and exercise, and we know we should keep a positive mindset, right? All those 3 things that I think are the keys to living a healthy lifestyle. But what is that gap, right? What's that motivating force? Where's that fuel coming from? And again, that all begins within, right? So it's a matter of asking yourself, okay, why am I constantly, not why am I having the cookie, but what's making me have the cookie? Like, what's that cause? Like, there's obviously something emotional happening, right? Maybe it's stress, or maybe it just reminds you of grandma when you used to bake cookies, right? There's so many things. It's
There's
not
something there, though.
A negative, right, thing, but I
true.
think understanding why, right, we're making, right, everything is a choice. And as I read somewhere in a book, I don't remember the exact quote, but there's always that space between the choice, right? So it's that space where you have that inner knowing, where you take a pause, right, and you ask yourself, why. So one of my favorite books is from Deepak Chopra, like, what are you hungry for? Which is an amazing read if you ever. He is actually my greatest spiritual teacher and mentor, because he came from a doctor from the physical, right, wellness world, and then kind of evolved more into, wealth and abundance and spirituality, and of course, all his meditations, and being an author, as I'm writing my book this year, finally.
Awesome.
He's written, 75 bestsellers.
So many.
Always continue to amaze me, but yeah, it's the whole like food psychology, right, of why, and really forget food, even if food is something that you feel you have control over, just those triggers of habits that don't necessarily serve us. It's not necessarily that we do them. We shouldn't punish ourselves for them because we're human, right? Like, even as much as I've evolved on my spiritual path, like, I still want a cookie every now and again, you know what I mean? So that's just something that reminds me of home, right? So, but it's just having control of that, I think, is really the difference. Being aware and feeling empowered, right, in every single choice.
Right.
And knowing that, at the end of the day, even if we slip and fall, as long as we get back up again and continue, that's really what makes the difference, just to never give up.
Yeah, well, and asking that question is really important, because if you don't, then you can't change it. You can't look at, okay, what habit do I want to have here? If we're just kind of on autopilot, which so many of us do tend to struggle with, like living life on autopilot and just kind of going along with, like you talked about earlier, what we're taught, which is, you go to school, you get the grades, you go get a job, you go to work every day. And it's easy to fall into that and not really ask yourself those questions of, why am I doing this? What do I really want to do instead?
Yes. And it's that introspection, really with everything in life. So start with health, because health is, I think, the most important, and it's the vessel. It's, as Jim Rohn says, your body is the only place that you have to live. And then evolving into your purpose, once you feel comfortable in your own skin, okay, now how am I connected to this higher power, this higher mission, right? This itch that I feel for more out of life. Yeah. And then how do I connect, right, those dots? So for me, all my work has been a direct correlation of everything I've experienced. And I always say all my clients and my students, they're all just a few steps behind me, joining me on this journey. I always say we're all in this together. They're joining me on this journey, and there's a few steps ahead, but they're like, hey, do we turn left here or do we turn right? And it's just me kind of opening that door, being that guide, being that, right, internal GPS, and that inner knowing to guide somebody, because I always say we can't do this alone, myself included. I've always had mentors and coaches along my journey, because we can't do this alone realistically. Why? Because we see things through our own perspective. Right. Sometimes you just need, right, to get outside of yourself. You need that kind of bird's eye view, right, to have somebody, question you, right? Because we're not going to always question ourselves, and have that introspective and have that awareness. Or we just can't see it because we're blinded for whatever reason, right? We have certain blocks based on past habits. So it's just having that, right, that other perspective, right, that other way of knowing and of seeing and of feeling the world. I think that truly, right, opens up so many doors. And then with that level of awareness, then we can start to take micro movements, right? Again, just taking small, what's the next step? And then once you accomplish that, well, what's the next one, right? So many of us are so quick to go from 0 to 60 and see things, and me included. I'm a future thinker. Like, I'm always like, okay, don't tell me what's next. Tell me what's 6 months from now, right? But I've really dialed back in my own life and in my own business, because so many of us are overwhelmed because we're just too far ahead of ourselves. So just take a step back and say, you know what? Consistency is the mother of mastery. Let me master this one step, right? And then once I've mastered that, I move on. And that's the way I run my business, and I coach others to run their business, is never to get too far ahead. Start with one offer, one thing that you're going to put out there, and master that. Number one, do an experiment, test and even see if there's a demand. I never create until I test first to see, like if I'm launching a course, for instance, a tip I always give my students is that you launch don't write the course, see if somebody wants it, sell the outline,
test the idea first, make sure you're creating something people want.
Exactly. Test it, post out there, get on live, get your story out. And then if people are like, oh my God, yes, like, okay, how do you do that? What are the next steps? Then you start birthing it. It's my finance background coming to light, and get investors, right, in your projects, and from there just kind of bring them to life.
It's so easy, I think, for a lot of us to have that big goal, that thing that we want to be here. Mm-hmm. And it's discouraging to just be like with that gap unless you do sit down and figure out, okay, what are the steps one at a time that are going to get me there?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back for a second to one of the things you said earlier while we were talking, and that's the idea of those 4 questions, because I think it is really important to ask yourself, not just what do you love, what are you passionate about, but what will people pay for? What is their value in? And there's so many different perspectives to figuring out, what I'm going to start my business around, or what direction to go if you're already in business and looking to kind of pivot or to shift what you're doing. So I know you've got a special report that goes over that for people. Where can people find that?
Yeah, so it's bit.ly/my reason for being. So MY reason for being, bit.ly/my reason for being. And it has the 4 questions, and then kind of expands a little bit, right? Like you said, how do I bring this, not just, okay, great, I've answered these questions, but what do people value? And then once you know what people value, or you think people value, you get out, you test it, and you bring it to life. So really kind of, like I said, opens the door, helps you really understand, because what I see so much in the marketplace, and why I got inspired to create this freebie, is women like myself starting out like, well, okay, I know that I'm good at helping people, and I know that, I'm a good mentor and I'm inspiring, but we all know being on Facebook and posting inspirational quotes is not a business, right?
No, that is not a business. Thank you for saying that.
And I say that lightly because, I know a lot of people, especially clients starting out, that's all they do. And then they're like, well, how come people don't want to buy my products? And I'm like, well, they don't really know who you are. They just know that you're inspiring, right? And so that's not enough. So how do you turn it into something?
Right.
I would say you've got to solve a specific solution. You got to have a specific solution to somebody's problem.
Yes,
absolutely. On that, right? It's like, I'm here. I want to be here. And in the middle is that fuel. It's that motivation. It's that solution. It's that step-by-step, okay, week 1, do this, week 2, week 3, guiding somebody on that path, right? And so once you have that idea of, okay, this is what I solve, instead of just being inspiring, okay, inspiring to do what? Right? I always say, to do what? To quit a job, to quit a toxic relationship, to start a business, right? Something that, right, again, that's connecting the spiritual and the physical world, because there needs to be something tangible that you're providing, because that's where people find value, right? It's hard to find value in something that you can't see, hear, feel, explain with your own eyes, with your own 5 senses. So just bringing that to life in a way that's relatable, but also speaking to the right people. I think that's really important, and something that, I struggled with initially. It's like, oh, I want to help everybody. Well, when you help everybody, you help nobody. So being specific as to who you help, but not being so specific, right? And it's funny that we had our conversation about, the art of giving a damn, and I said how much I love the name of the podcast, and you're like, yeah, I'm so sick of hearing people say like, oh, don't worry about this, and don't worry, right? So there's a happy medium between, you do some of that, right? You don't have to follow everybody's formula, because that bothers me too. Like, follow my 5-step, right? Just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
And it's okay if the 5-step formulas don't work for you. You are not broken. I tell people that all the time.
Yes, exactly. So just being real, but then opening the door and empowering others to make their own 5-step formula, right? It is really what I think it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes back to the idea of story, of sharing your story, because when people hear your story and they see your system, they're able to go, okay, these are the pieces that could work for me. And then they're empowered to take that and create their own success with it.
Yes. Take what resonates with you and get rid of the rest, and don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you got to do you, right? Because if not, I was talking about this in the podcast interview I had yesterday, then again, you're continuing to live a life that's not you, right? So if the corporate path wasn't you, and then you become an entrepreneur and you follow this entrepreneurial formula, you're carrying that same energy, right into this space. And it's very easy to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of people do that without even realizing that they've kind of fallen back into that trap, and then they get frustrated and it's, I'm trying to live my purpose. Why doesn't it feel different?
Yes, yes, because you're still living inside of the box, right? You're still living in some type of formula or needing that, that guidance. But as Deepak Chopra always says, instead of thinking outside the box, get rid of it.
I like that. I like that.
That's how I live.
No box.
No box.
Great. Awesome. Well, for everybody listening, make sure that you go over and go through those questions, whether you're considering starting a business, you're new in business, you've been in business a while. Those are always good questions to ask yourself, to kind of realign and get focused on what it is that you're here to do and why. So you can find them again at bit.ly/my reason for being. Wherever you're listening or watching this today, we'll put that link somewhere near that so you can find it, click it easily. We'll also put a link for you to connect with Jessica, find out more about what she does and a little more about these ideas and concepts of living your life and your business is a big, giant experiment. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to pop on today and have a conversation with me.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's really been a pleasure. And listeners, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you got some golden nuggets in there. It's always my mission.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, make sure you click the link somewhere near this video, connect with Jessica, get those 4 questions, and take some time to really think about them. Wherever you're listening at, please rate, review, hit like, subscribe to the show, and we'll see you back for another episode. Until then, every decision you run across, just ask yourself, what if I looked at this as an experiment and jump into it?